You would think if you saw this at some garage sale with a 80s, 90s stucco bar tape and old 105 componentry with a 7-speed back with kind of like touring type brakes, you would think like, oh, this is just some kind of garage sale bike. But hold on, this gym has some secrets. Let's take a look. There's no stickers, but there is a Zunow stamp in the bottom bracket shell. Let's review. This is a hidden gem, or is it just junk after this? Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles.
Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hi, I'm Justin the guy, obviously of a garage shop. Taking scary how to use bikes one bike at a time.
If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Welcome back to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hey, I'm Justin the guy on this old bike, and today we got a gem. This is very interesting. This is one of those situations where the owner of the bike shop I used to work at, besides Parker Bikes, who's lead cycler here in Fort Collins, Colorado, he has a neighbor and he's like, hey, I want to drop this bike off and have you take a look at it. I'm like, all right. I take a look at it, I'm like, what's this old junker 10-speed type of thing? And I got a little closer look at it and I was like, huh, this is kind of interesting. Kind of like that classic steel that you're seeing that's being replicated today from like Salsa and Surly and some other brands like the old school or the newer old school, the Paramount, which was actually Waterford. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is I kind of looked at them like, well, I don't see any stickers, and I saw that stamp. And that stamp, interesting enough, has a Bonner bracket kind of bird phoenix underneath it. I'll take a picture and show it right here as a close-up. Pretty cool details. Yeah, it exposes the bearings underneath, but that's one of those things where you got to take a second look and kind of run the numbers or run the name and see what you find. Well, it turns out to be a company from Japan, or a guy in Japan made a company, and it was in the 60s, 70s. Well, with this particular frame, he was like craftsman type. Well, it turns out, fast forward today, obviously they're not making them today, or if they are, I'm not aware of them, but it's interesting that these things have a huge value on the used market. Crazy enough. They did make some titanium ones. It has an internal cable for the brake, which is kind of unique for its age. But it has your traditional 1-inch headset, pressed cups, one threaded with your standard dropouts here. But it does have the touring style brake posts, but it doesn't have touring mounts. So it's not really a touring bike. It's kind of like a pseudo cyclocross bike or bad weather bike. Anywho, we're going to dive into this a little bit deeper. But it turns out that particular frame, or the manufacturer, made these by hand, I think, back in the 70s. And this, I believe, this has to be 70s. I think the story goes is this was a frame in a box for a long time, and then it got sold to individual, and you put on these parts. Well, these are newer 80s vintage, which outdates or earlier dates the frame and fork. So the frame and fork, I believe, is in the 80s, and the componentry is in the 90s. If I didn't say that right earlier, pardon me. But yes, this is like the RSX componentry from Shimano. That's the precursor of Sora and Colaris, or not Colaris, Tiagra. And so you got, that mixed with 105 crankset on here. So needless to say, it has 600 wheels. So, it had decent componentry put on this in the 90s. So basically it was kind of a build-up. Crazy thing is there's no stickers on the frame, excluding the stamping of the shell, and I would have not known what it was whatsoever. But kind of cool because you can get a wider tire in the back, so that gets you into your gravel, and the front has that brake system too. But what's weird is very tight tolerances within the fork blade here, so you're kind of limited, I would say, to the width of tire up front. But you can still probably get a medium range a touring style 28, 30, 32 maybe on this particular frame. So definitely on the back, question on the front. anyway, what I found out there is there's the frames being thrown out there, and they're up there over 1,000 just for the frame. And obviously there's some models that are probably more popular than this one. I didn't find an exact match, but very similar. And it is in the 80s, and it is, you know, made in Japan, and it also has a stamp where it's made in Japan, Okinawa, I think, or something like that. I have to double check. But anywho, this is pretty interesting. So what the gentleman wants me to do is refurbish it, basically do my magic, and basically he wants to sell it. So I'm kind of doing a, pardon the interruption, there's more. More you say? Push the more button. Push it. Push it. I dare you to push it. Once you push that button, you get more details about the video you're watching, in addition to all the tools that I use in the shop, as well as suggestion for improving your ride. In addition to help me provide advocacy in the cycling community, also links to other social media accounts as well as my website to find the products I actually sell and other insights in the industry. Other videos linked below. Extend your cycling experience here on YouTube. And now back to your original programming. Yeah, I'm doing like a one-off consignment type of situation, which I don't do this typically, but you know, he was a neighbor of my former boss kind of thing, so I feel obligated. But anywho, that's not part of the story. But we're gonna take a dive into this guy and go back in time and take a look. Interesting enough that it does have like the touring style cantilever brakes, which are kind of tight, the back one. And I want to start taking the wheels off. The tires obviously need to be switched out. I do have some Conti touring style tires I'm going to throw on this guy. I figured instead of stripping out of the frame and selling it that way, I'd at least, you know, get it all pre-built. And well, we got some red thread here that got caught up in the front hub. You'll find, oh, it's all sorts of weird stuff on here. Well, definitely coated and protected the hub. So that's a little loose. I kind of have a feeling the guy put it together himself. The reason being, there's a couple little tidbits. The cable routing on both front and rear derailleur are not right. And the crankset, I don't know if you can hear it. The crank is completely loose. So loose, matter of fact. These are supposed to be cold weld pressed 4 slotted, and I feel that it's so loose, if I just take this anchor bolt out, it'll slide right off. This is super dangerous. Hands down, this can get you hurt. So good thing you didn't ride it very much. If you did, it was about ready to come off, because the only thing that's holding on is that bolt. And another question is I'm going to have to inspect this bolt here, or the 4 slots. Reason being is these 4 slots, they're called cold weld. Basically, it's 4 contact points, and when these loosen up, they'll start waddling out, kind of bending the aluminum portion, not the steel portion, the spindle. And if they're waddled out, it doesn't matter how tight you get this on there, it will work itself loose again. So I'll have to make sure. Probably going to check it beforehand before I get too deep into this, due to the fact that that's going to be an added cost, and it's not kind of for me just to go willy-nilly and do what I'm supposed to do or want to do. But if I don't get a good contact on that to support, I'm going to have a conversation with the owner. It's like, okay, what we need to do is basically strip it and sell the frame, period. But anyway, I am going to strip it to clean all the parts and then inspect. So that was oddly too easy to take off. So let's proceed to the rest of the bike here and feel the hubs. These are old school 600 Shimano. They are basically the precursor of the Ultegra componentry. So actually pretty decent stuff, pretty smooth. Because the next level up was Dura-Ace, and not too bad. These are kind of cool. No, this doesn't have that fun little grease port. One of these vintage years, must be the year after, they used to have a little slide port, and you can put a grease gun in there and kind of inject the bearings with fresh grease. Kind of interesting little thing. Pretty much not needed today due to the fact that Most of the bikes are sealed bearings, and the shifters on this have to be completely gone through, put in an ultrasonic cleaner because they're not releasing to go down. They're just stuck in the up position, and I am looking for a quick link. This is not a Shimano chain, so it might be like a Sachs. Looks like a Sachs, which is a precursor to SRAM. I think they purchased them back in the day. So in this particular situation, you just push the pin, but not all the way through. You just kind of give it a go through to the other side of the plate. Usually flush to the tool here gives you enough space to work with that. And may need to replace the chain, but we'll take a look. Looks like the componentry is actually still, I would say, in better condition, i.e. has not been used. So that's a kind of a good indicator here. Release these cables. I'm not going to cut the bridge cable on these due to the fact that's a one-off kind of deal. But I am going to, this is your bridge piece there. And if you didn't notice or see, this has a cable stop through the stem, which is very interesting. Kind of a problem if you adjust your stem. It's going to definitely mess up your brakes, so not a great idea. A lot of them came up with like a brake stop, cable housing stop on the actual headset here where my finger is, and that's where a lot of like the cyclocross todays will have those stops. But this is an interesting stem. It's a Cicelli with the Cicelli bars, so it did come with decent componentry. Obviously, he got a updated saddle there, which almost looks like a postal saddle. And these brake pads give me flashbacks of the early 90s. Yeah, I remember working on a lot of those back in the day, kind of thing. So, yeah, and okay, that's a regular drop. Sometimes you get some really interesting things going on these older frames. And hopefully I don't come across anything too odd. These did have the adjusters for dropouts, like the little threaded bolts, but they're missing. So doesn't look like they've been there for a while. All right, so this is your RSX. And if you look at the jockey pullers, they look almost new, so did not get a lot of use. All right, let's jump into this front derailleur, pop that cable, and then we're gonna take the Einstein pump. So Topeak is one of those parts brands that make pumps and cages and all sorts of cool stuff. But yeah, this is, I also have a Topeak MacGyver tool, and I'll have to show you that one of these days. So all right, we're gonna dive into taking these cages off, and I'm gonna start using my newer fancy Allen wrenches I just got. Oh, quite nice. Supposed to fit in a little bit better. Of course, the colors on these Allen wrenches are going to dirty up within a hot minute here, but that is just a-okay. And you know, if I really want to clean them, I can be cleaning them. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take all these bolt parts off to make sure there's no compromised rust. It is a steel frame, so knowing it is a steel frame, got to double check and make sure all these little bits are not seized up, especially the vintage of it. I mean, I see a little surface rust on the bolts themselves, so it has seen some elements over the time being. And unfortunately, what I've seen so far, it doesn't look like the bike is crashed per se, but it has had some garage wear, which unfortunately that means you got chipped up from falling over or climbed over in the garage. Ooh, that's a long bolt. Whew. Yeah, they've usually put longer ones for when you put mounts like the pump here and various other accessories to secure that, so you don't lose those. All right, this nice little pewter cage. Set those aside, and to the next size. Let's get the, this also has a braze-on mount welded to the frame, which is kind of cool. And the 105 front derailleur to match the crank, which was pretty decent stuff. It held up well. And this is a triple, which gives you a lot of climbing gears, which is nice. That's for sure. Even though it's older, it's probably definitely a goodie. So we're gonna go underneath. Pull these cables out of my way real quick. And I wonder if the other side is just as loose. Yeah, I won't say fall off loose, but they definitely didn't crank that bad boy down. Get that crank bolt to be washed. And this is where you actually would need the tool to press, pin, and push that crank arm off. You thread it in all the way, make sure it's threaded in all the way. And this is a bottom bracket that is designed to be adjusted, and I can kind of tell right away is kind of loose. Oh, that was way too easy. Whew, that is questionable. Like I mentioned on the other crank, I'm seeing some flare out around the square portion there, which means if it doesn't anchor, it's not going to stay. That is a very, very bad deal. Check that out. Oh man, that needs to be overhauled. Got some tape here. We're just going to take that off. So we're just going to clean that frame, and that's just ugly tape. So, what makes it so special? Well, let's show you. So you look at the bottom bracket here, it has a cutout portion for this kind of bird phoenix looking, and it has the Zunow underneath there, and cycle works in English, and Osaka, O-S-A-K-A, Japan, and the cable guides are actually in the frame with a little bit of a detailing. So when these are brazed, you got this nice little piece. So you got the stamping underneath and stamping on top too. So this is what is identified what bike this is. What model is whole nother question. I will be definitely cleaning and detailing this frame. It does have a pretty purple, kind of has a glitter to it, but you know, unfortunately there's some chips. But I will definitely get all those chips out as much as I can, and protect the frame, or protect the paint that's already on here. So let's dive into more. All right, I'm about ready to get to the point of giving this guy the first wash and see what we got. Kind of inspect the frame and see if it's damaged or not. If it's damaged, and be like, well, sir, I'm sorry. You have a damaged frame, and it pretty much doesn't provide any sense of value. Oh boy, that's tight. Did you hear that crink, 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 crink? Whew, glad I got my tool in there very tight. Or flush, Alan. I can't believe I said that. Anyway, yeah. Oh, this one's kind of, I want to use a tool on that. Use tire lever so I'm not scarring out the frame trying to get this. Can't get underneath the portion of here. Interesting. Oh well. I have to let that lie. This is where Bike Aid comes in really handy. It's very penetrating lube for like little tight spots. Let that soak. So that's soaking. I'm gonna grab some purple power and a good rag. Yeah, this has a lot of interesting things I'll need to be removing. The old computer, it's pretty much obsolete now. And unfortunately, that's a big old nice scratch in the frame underneath from probably a car rack. Yeah, we're starting to look pretty good. That just has some really cool details underneath. Unfortunately, they're all underneath. That's just crazy. But that is its signature. And might be some kind of a cultural thing when they were designing this, which is also a neat little perspective. But yeah, this is gonna need some lots of loving. Lots of loving. I will be taking the brakes off to make sure they're clean and ready to go. And may have to overhaul the headset as well as the bottom bracket. So this is going to be a complete overhaul for the most part. I have to check those hubs too. But hey, classic like these don't come around very often. Definitely gonna enjoy this gem of a classic. Get that gooey stuff off. Put a nice new tape on there. So yeah, we're at the point where I think the frame is good. I just need to strip the rest of the parts off, give the drivetrain a good clean, inspect those wheels, get some new tires on there, string it up with new housing, get some new bar tape on there. Really inspect this crank. That is going to be questionable. That's going to have a good enough contact to hold form, but we'll see. It might. I've seen worse. Just gonna have to get a closer look. Maybe not too bad. Maybe it's just a casting lip that I'm seeing that's kind of weird. Yeah, once it's clean, it'll be a little bit easier to identify and so forth. But other than that, I'm just gonna grind away. Gonna put some elbow grease into this. This might be a couple day project, so hang with me. And here's the componentry all cleaned up and ready to go after this. Here we have the cleaned up cassette and chain quite beautifully. Brakes and derailleurs. All these actually seem like they're pretty new-like condition. Shifters had to been blown out. They just had some bad grease in there that just made everything sticky, but refreshed. They're working well. And hey, look at these wheels. Smooth, true, and ready to go. One side note is these are anodized rims, and they do not show hardly any wear. When you do see wear on those, you actually kind of get a lighter discoloring, which you'll see from the brakes. This does not. So essentially, to my conclusion is this group set's pretty much in a like new condition, oddly enough. And looking at this frame, holy cow. Overhauled the headset, there's a video on that. Overhauled the bottom bracket, there's a video on that. This frame is actually in real good shape, and the remainder paint on it is actually pretty good. If somebody really wanted to spruce this up, they can have the paint stripped and repainted. There's no dings, so this would be a pretty good project to do such a thing if one wanted to do so. Well, let's recap. Yeah, this has actually been kind of a fun little project, and it puts me back in the day of using a whole bunch of tools I haven't touched in a long time, which is kind of fun in itself. And you know, skill level of, oh yeah, I remember doing headsets and bottom brackets like that, and you know, so forth. Yeah, kind of interesting. It is an interesting frame. It is, you know, very unique. It's one of those things. We'll see if there's a following that still searches out the Zunow frames. But hey, you know, it's a good little bike. It's going to be solid for somebody that wants to have some collector. It has decent componentry on it. But anywho, it was really kind of fun to put this together. Let's take some look at the final results after this. Don't, what the? Oh, you gotta be kidding me.